The Republican leader.
Mr. President, there's a broad bipartisan majority in the Senate that would like to vote on Iran sanctions. The dilemma we have here is that the majority leader doesn't want this vote to occur. So I'd like to start this morning with a few words about an issue that should be of grave concern to all of us, and that is the threat of a nuclear-armed Iran. Now, it's no exaggeration to say that this is one of the most significant foreign policy challenges of our time, and one that we simply have to get right. That's why a strong bipartisan majority has sought to pass legislation here in the Senate that puts teeth into the negotiations that have followed November's interim agreement. The challenge we've had is the majority leader doesn't want us to vote on it. It could be that he's afraid it will actually pass. Republican senators, and hopefully some Democratic senators as well, are going to continue to press the majority leader to allow a vote on this legislation before these negotiations end. The Nuclear Weapon-Free Iran Act is a perfectly reasonable bill. This is a Menendez-Kirk bill. It doesn't disrupt ongoing negotiations. It simply provides an incentive for Iran to keep its commitment under the interim agreement. It says that if Iran doesn't keep its word, then it faces even tougher sanctions at the end of this 6-month period. In other words, it doesn't disrupt the negotiations at all, even though the big, sort of the high leader, the supreme leader in Iran says he's not paying any attention to these talks. And nevertheless, it doesn't disrupt these talks, which seem to be going nowhere, but does say at the end of the 6-month period, you're going to get tougher sanctions if nothing comes of the discussions. It puts teeth into the talks that are already taking place. And it's a recognition of the success we've already had as a result of prior sanctions. After all, there's a good reason to believe that sanctions are what brought the Iranians to the table in the first place. They were hurting. So it just stands to reason that the Iranians break the interim deal, they should get tougher sanctions. If nothing happens, we should send a message, you can't just keep talking forever. Something happens at the end of the interim period. That's especially true given the fact that we're actually running out of tools here, short of the use of force. This bill is the best mechanism we have to keep the Iranians at the table until we get the right outcome and to ensure they're sticking to their end of the agreement. We should not fall victim to Iran's efforts at public diplomacy. And let me just repeat that a strong bipartisan majority in both houses of Congress agree with this approach. So there's simply no good reason for the majority leader to prevent a vote on this crucial legislation. He's gridlocking the Senate, preventing the Senate from working its will on a bill that enjoys broad bipartisan support and makes elementary good sense and is the best hope we have to prevent a nuclear-armed Iran. There's no excuse for muzzling the Congress on an issue of this importance to our national security, to the security of Israel, our closest ally in the Middle East, and to international stability more broadly. Now, I know many active members of AIPAC, the majority leader mentioned AIPAC, they want to have this vote. They'll be coming to Washington next week from all over the country. I'll bet you, Mr. President, this is a vote they want to have. This is a rare issue that should unite both parties in common purpose. And there's no question it would if the majority leader would simply drop his reflexive deference to a president whose foreign policy is focused on withdrawing from our overseas commitments, a foreign policy that at worst poses a serious threat to our own security and that of our allies. So once again, I call on the majority leader to allow the Congress, allow the Senate to serve its purpose and express itself in our nation's policy toward Iran. Let our constituents speak on this all-important issue on which so many of us from both parties actually agree. In the joint plan of action, the President made clear that he opposes additional sanctions. Why don't we let Congress speak? Let Congress have a voice. Let's stand together for a forward-deployed, ready, and lethal force that makes our commitments real in the eyes of friend and foe alike. Let's hold Iran accountable. Actually hold them accountable. Let's do the right thing. Approve this legislation and send it to the President's desk. The clock is ticking, Mr. President, and the time to act is now.